So, I've been seeing people bottom 4ing with Syndra due to the lack of knowledge of the outdated version of the comp. But don't worry, my friends, because Exterior is here to teach you the updated version of Faded Dryad. In this video, we're going to cover the strongest items, strongest units, and strongest augments. Before we start, I have a Patreon now if you want to support me, or if you want to learn how to level in certain stages, you can check it out in the description down below. Now back to the video. Your main DPS you would want is Syndra, and her best install item is Blue Buff. This item allows her to keep casting her ability over and over, and then having a Nashor's Tooth on top of that makes it even cast even faster. And then to amplify her damage, having a death cap would be the best. And then her best alternative items you can choose from is, instead of having a blue buff, you can do Spirit Sojourn, or even Adaptive Helm. You need at least like one mana item so she can keep casting her ability over and over. And if you can't get a Nashor's Tooth, having a Giant Slayer is okay. This item allows you to do extra damage to tanks on top of that, and it also gives you attack speed as well, so you can keep casting, faster and faster. And then Jewel Gauntlet is a pretty good alternative amplifier item if you need the extra damage. And her best Ornn artifact items would be having a Mana Zane. This item allows her to keep casting infinite, like really fast, so by the time this item is actually done, the duration of the mana that you get, the next cast that she would do will hit even harder because you cast so much earlier. And then Blighting Jewel is probably like her best Ornn artifact item. This item is actually really good on her because the way how her damage works is she throws out multiple like hits, and the more you hit with the abilities, the more magic resist that lowers on the enemy. So she would actually shred them to even like 0 magic resist with this item. So it's really good on her to have. And then you can never go wrong with DFG on any AP unit. This item's just really powerful overall on any like ability power character. Your main tank for the board is gonna be an Ornn. The reason why Ornn, not Thresh, because this unit is actually really strong right now at the moment. And on top of that, he also gives items to Thresh if he stays alive long enough. And on top of that, he's also Behemoth with Thresh. And then his best in slot item would be having a Gargoyle Stoneplate. This item's really powerful on Ornn because he gives him more resistances because he has a shield already. Getting more armor and magic resist is actually really good with all the shield that you have. And then Onyx Spark is really useful to have on the board for Syndra because you need that magic resist shred so Syndra could do more damage. And then Declaw is a really good item overall since this item gives you high amounts of magic resist and it gives you some health regen on top of that. His best alternative item is having a Redemption. If you don't want Onyx Spark, you could throw Redemption in instead. And the other two like strong like tank items for Ornn would be like Protector's Vow and Warmongs. You can never go wrong with these items. They have really good stats. His best Ornn artifact is having Suspicious Trenchcoat. This item is actually really powerful in Ornn because you have multiple Ornns on the board. Then you can just keep crafting items for everyone on the board. So this is like the must take for Ornn. And Eternal Winter is a very strong item in general because it stuns everything. And Innovating Locket is really good on Ornn because it makes him cast even more. And then for utility items, the best item holder would be Kindred with Static Shiv for the magic resist shred. If you don't have Onyx Spark, you can do Static Shiv on Kindred. And if you don't have anti-heal on the board, having Merlicon on her is really good too. And then another unit that's actually really good, utility items pretty well, is Thresh. A Sunfire is probably like one of the best items you could put on him because it gives anti-heal on the board if you don't have a Merlicon. And then if you don't want to put Onyx Spark on Ornn, you can put Onyx Spark on Thresh instead for that magic resist shred. And always keep in mind to build at least one magic resist shred item and then one anti-heal item. If you have more than that, you're just wasting potential of like better items you can build later. And then leftover tank items you can throw on Thresh as well. And the best support items you can have on the board is having a big gem. This item is really powerful for Faded in general because having Ascension is actually so strong for them since the board stalls out pretty long anyways. Getting that extra damage after 15 seconds will help playing Faded really well. And then you can never go wrong with having a Radiant Virtue over Redemption. You can just have this item on the board and he just heals everything. Every other support item is good as well, but these two are like the best ones to have for Faded. And then because you're playing Faded and Dryad, the best emblem holders would be for Dryad. Having a Thresh Dryad is actually really good for him because it gives him a lot of stats. And then the best item holder for Faded would be Ornn. So essentially the idea is having the spats on the frontline units. For the best level 4 board you can have would be having a Ahri, Kindred, and Yasuo for 3 Faded. And then +1 would be like a Rek'Sai because you also get Dryad with Kindred. And then items kind of depends on the game, right? So for example, I would say the best first item slam so you can keep win streaking would be a Sunfire, a Redemption, and Onyx Spark. Or instead of Onyx Spark, having a Static Shiv or Nashor's Tooth. And the items you want to put on them is depending on who you have level 2 at the time. So if you have a level 2 Yasuo or level 2 Rek'Sai, just put the tank items on them first. And then for Nashor's Tooth and Static, I would say Kindred would be the best. But if you want to keep win streaking like early, having it on Ahri is actually really good. And then if you want to like hard win streak that's not like the BIS items, having a Crown Guard on one of the tanks is really good. Same with a Steadfast Heart, so you can keep saving HP or win streak. Adaptive Helm is actually a really good flex item overall. You can use it as a backline item or even a frontline item. But I would say it's the best to start with as a frontline item. And an Archangel Staff is a really good damage item to start with overall. If you can slam like a blue buff or a death cap, just slam it right away for your backline unit. Blue buff on Ahri isn't the best, but it is really good on Kindred. And then by the time you hit level 5, you want to throw in a +1 tank, like for example Kuboko, because he also gets Bruiser with Rek'Sai, so you can easily hit a Kuboko too. And then say for example you have a Rek'Sai to, you just put take items on her, like for example like Sunfire and Onyx Spark. And then if you have a blue buff start, just throw it on Kindred and then a Nashor's Tooth on her as well, so you can keep doing extra damage and keep win streaking with it. And these are just example items. It's not, you don't have to follow this exactly. And then by the time you're level 6, I would say just add in a +1 Reaper, like for example Kha'Zix. The reason why is very good to have because Kindred is also a Reaper, and 2 Reaper is actually pretty strong at the moment, so it actually makes Kindred do a lot more extra damage, and she crits her ability as well. And then speaking of her ability, when she casts her ability, putting her in the third row is like the best because she would fly to the backline after she casts her ability. But if you have a chance to play for 5 Faded, then just do it. So you throw in like a Thresh and a Philios, or if you have a Spat, then you can just take out a Philios and throw in a +1 unit. Like for example, like a +1 Behemoth or a +1 Bruiser. Either one works. And then by the time you hit level 7, you should have 5 Faded by then. Just throw in a +1 tank so you can sustain HP. And then by the time you hit level 8, your board should be something like this, where you have a main DPS Syndra with the other Faded units such as Ahri, Kindred, Yasuo, and then Thresh as a sub-tank. And then for the rest of the Dryads, it will be Ornn as the main tank, Rek'Sai, and Gnar. Having a Gnar and Yasuo is only just because if you cannot hit the 5 cost units. This just fills in the synergies. But if you can't hit the 5 cost units, this will be the cap version at level 8, where you have Azir and Set instead. And then by the time you level 9, you throw in Sylas. The reason why Sylas, because you get +1 Bruiser with Rek'Sai, and you also get Umbra with Set, so you get extra shields, so you have more defenses on the front line. And then if you have Spats, you can accelerate your comp even better. So if you have, example, a Faded Spat, then you could just take out an Ahri and throw in a Lissandra instead. Or if you have a Dryad Spat, then you just throw it on Thresh and take out Rek'Sai, and you throw in like maybe Galio, or even like a better frontline unit such as like a Rakan, or even like an Udyr or something. So essentially it's just like find whatever you can with the Spats. And then for the Faded links, for level 3 through 7, if you have 3 Faded, you want to do a Yasuo +1 carry. And then by the time you have 5 Faded, having a Yasuo plus Thresh is actually really good because it gives you the extra defense. Since most of the time you're not going to have a level 2 Syndra yet, but by the time you do hit level 8 and 9, if you have a level 1 Syndra, then Thresh and Syndra Faded is really good together for that extra sustain. But by the time you do hit level 2 Syndra, then you want to fade it with an Ahri, and then if your Syndra is dying for whatever reason, then just fade it with the Set. And then for the augments, the best ones to take is the emblems such as Faded Crest and Dryad Crest. These two accelerate your board even faster, so having these augments is actually really good. And then because your board is mostly ability casting, a Jewel Lotus is really good for that because it makes your ability crit. And then same thing with Combat Caster, because you're casting a lot, you get a lot more sustain with this augment. And then Potable Forge, you can never go wrong with it because every Ornn item is almost technically good for this board. And then Little Buddies is a pretty high win rate because it makes Syndra do even more damage. And if you do have an Azir on the board, it makes them even stronger. And then Martyr, you can never go wrong with it. It gives you a lot of sustain on the board. Fully Adaptive is really good for Syndra. If you have this augment, just play 2 Adaptive Helms on Syndra and then a Death Cap. And then Baboom is always really good on Syndra because she's casting a lot, so it makes her even do extra damage. And then you can never go wrong with learning the spell because mostly Faded board is AP. And that's it for my Faded Dryad comp guide. If you have any questions or if you want me to cover a different comp, just let me know in the comment section down below. Until then, later.